talk about the sleep switch. Like, why is that so important? Like, how did you kind of discover this, and why is it helpful for people to know?
Yeah, so I get the question all the time, like, what's the latest study on this? So the sleep switch was coined by Clifford Sapir out of Harvard starting in like 2003. He kind of evolved the study on it, but it turns out that, and there's been multiple studies on hunter-gatherer. Jerry Siegel out of UCLA did a whole like year study on hunter-gatherers. We somehow have this image that like at dark, they just kind of all fell over and fell asleep. And they must have slept really long because then that's more than 8 hours. None of that is really true. Your brain is actually triggered by change all over the place, not just by sleep, but it's looking for what that change is in the environment. And back to that little marine worm, the mechanism that releases melatonin is that sleep switch. And it's light and temperature. Now, different people are going to respond on a scale. Everybody's a bell curve, everyone's different. Light may be more sensitive to you, but most people will find the environment. And the reason is if you didn't have a brain, the only way you know to turn on or off something is the environment. You're going to have to measure what's happening outside. So our brains do that without us even knowing it. So a small change of temperature, even warming up your socks or putting on socks and warming up your feet for some people will be enough. All the way up to, some of those biohackers or even Terry Walls, who has MS and really
Mhm.
struggles to flip that switch. She'll spend 20 minutes in an ice bath, which again is an alternative to our product. Absolutely. You can get cold showers and cold ice baths. I do prefer the way we do it, but it is always possible. There's always a hack. And if you do that, you can't do it right to fall asleep, but within an hour. So, like an hour before you really want to fall asleep, you take that 20-minute ice bath, and it is like an elephant tranquilizer. It will knock you out because your body will be like, hell yes, we're going to sleep. And so it really is like that's how it works. You have to turn off sleep as well. That makes it easier for the mechanism to work. And we do that by warming up, just like the planet warms up and gets brighter out. So the combination of warming up and sunshine in the morning will turn off that. And then it allows that mechanism to reset. Kind of like your computer is better if you turn it on and off sometimes. Your brain body has to have that on off switch for those mechanisms. And when that's clean and crisp, yeah, you sleep a whole lot better.
Okay, this is fascinating. So my wife, I told her I was going to interview you today. I'm so excited. I told her, my wife just, I just turned 40. My wife turned like 42. And so she even has some hormonal changes she's been experiencing recently. And I said, there's some good research talking about sleep and then the cooling of the body temperature, I think for hormones, which I'd love to ask you about. And she's like, well, who's Tara? I'm like, oh, I'm telling her about your product. And she said, Joel, I don't want to get colder. Like I'm already freezing. And I'm like, no, no, no. But the technology actually, I think now you've got it to the point where it even can adapt, and as you're sleeping in real time it can change the temperature. But maybe you could talk about some of that new technology, and then even how women maybe might differ from men, and the hormonal kind of things that are going on during sleep.
Yeah, so women are kind of complicated. Everybody knows that. I
Yeah.
think everyone's like, yeah, I agree. But when hormones in general, and actually you'll see kids going through puberty, you'll see kids even with ADHD that have different sort of hormonal things in addition to what's going on in their brains. They'll all have a little bit of wonky temperature, and it makes sense. We all run a fever when we're not feeling well. It's one of the first little systems that we're not sure about. And we need to think about terms of your wife's probably thinking about cold in terms of, ambient room temperature. And we think about the air we live in all the time. And we're very ingrained to this comfort state of let's be comfortable.
Yep.
But we're 98 degrees or 37 degrees Celsius if you're international. But, when you think about that, cooler than 98 degrees or thermal neutral is what we're looking for. And so if you don't have a high metabolic rate, or maybe you're not going through a hormonal change, it may require very little cooling to facilitate that. But your body in deep sleep wants to drop 2 degrees core body temperature. Now, that's not
Mm.
just your hands colder, that's your heart, lungs, that inner part. And it's actually really difficult to get that cooler if you're all covered in blankets and comfortable. And honestly, that's what I did wrong for a long time is I like to warm up to fall asleep. But shortly after falling asleep, you see my circadian rhythm, my core body temperature will go up a little bit and then go down into that valley.
Mm.
And that's very natural. A lot of women do follow that. Again, minus menopause and pregnancy and all the other things that kind of throw that off or throw that for a loop, but that's pretty common to do. But again, you think about temperature not in terms of ambient temperature, because once you're under those covers and you're wearing your pajamas and you got your whatever your mattress is made of, those foams are all absorbing heat. And then you're basically like back to that analogy of cooking something. You're a piece of bread in the oven. So
Mhm.
you're either going to bake or you're going to stay neutral, so you're not baking more, and you want to be cooler. So again, all of the things that go into it are so much more than just that ambient temperature of what that is. But you do want to facilitate your body to cool off during deep sleep. And the magic of that for first responders or people on shift work or weird times, back to what we talked about, Kelly Starrett is fabulous. He's on our medical board. Love, love, love him. He talks about sleep density. And again, when you want to sleep densely, you want to sleep off times, you're just not perfect in the middle of the night. This is what's going to tell your body, go ahead and get that deep sleep. That's really hard to get for any of those first responders, shift workers, anyone that's not able to sleep exactly 10 to 6 or whatever that time frame is for you. This is the ideal hack to kind of get past that and tell your body, no, really, this is the sleep mechanism. Let's just do this sleep thing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the more research I delved into and then just hearing some of your talks, the TEDx talks, I mean, it really is pretty much one of the ultimate hacks. I mean, it's, we always talk about going to the gym and working out, but what everybody says, recovery is where you get your gains. And this is a pretty big way to get recovered fastly. I'm curious, just on the note of hormones and like menopause, have you got any just data back from a lot of women, and have they seen just success maybe where, and I work and coach with a lot of women actually, and menopause and hormones, because that's a lot of times when they have weight issues, and what we see too is estrogen dominance and things like that
Mhm.
come into play. So have you seen, just by flipping the switch and kind of dialing on their sleep, that maybe things have reversed or even subsided during those menopausal years?
Yeah, so half of it is the credit to sleep. So when you sleep really well and you have uninterrupted sleep and you're able to get that sleep density, you just have less symptoms. We actually just published a study in the Journal of Menopause in August, and that was for menopausal women. We basically had them sleep on our product, and it was a 50% reduction in hot flashes, not just at
Wow.
night, but also during the day. And again, back to that power of, what happens during sleep is really magical.